When Hollywood Studios, or MGM Studios if you wish, opened Muppet Vision 3D, it was really a revolutionary. It was a revolutionary film. Things, 3D films, and especially things like Muppet Vision 3D had never been done before. The idea of using in theater effects like bubbles or a live performer. In this case, a live performer playing Sweetums, or having audio animatronics in the theater reacting to the film. In this case, Statler and Waldorf, Bean Bunny, and then the Swedish Chef, and of course the Orchestra of Penguins. So Muppet Vision 3D really was kind of established what a 3D film would be. It also kind of turned it on its ear, because we had already had a 3D experience already with Captain EO, and I think that the Imagineers kind of took what they learned from the Captain EO experience, and they put it all together in this one show called Muppet Vision 3D. Now, the story behind Muppet Vision 3D is originally Jim Henson was in talks with Disney in the probably late 80s, early 90s, about building a Muppet themed land. So it would have been, they would have had a ride, they would have had a show, they would have had dining, entertainment, all the whole 9 yards of what we expect a theme park land to have. So, there've been some, like floating concept arts floating around. The ride was supposed to be a takeoff on the Great Movie Ride. This would have been the Great Muppet Movie Ride, or something like that. But the show was always envisioned as a 3D show, and so they came up with Muppet Vision 3D. And, all the Imagineers worked on it. And of course they were, in talks with the ride as well. So they were in development with the ride as well. That was happening at the same time with Muppet Vision 3D. Jim Henson was, heavily involved with, obviously, not only the Muppet themed land, but also with Muppet Vision 3D. So he performs in the show. He performs Kermit and all of his other characters, and gets that completed. And then he was still in talks with Disney about what to do with this Muppet themed area. And then unfortunately, somewhere along the line, I don't know if it was halfway, or if it was, or what the exact timeline was, but unfortunately, Jim Henson passes away, and Disney decides to ultimately not go forward with the whole Muppet themed land. So everything was pretty much scrapped. The Imagineers, and especially the people at the Henson Company, were afraid that Muppet Vision 3D would not be, put into the theme park. But to kind of backtrack a little bit, Muppet Vision 3D kind of was really fit the aesthetic of MGM Studios, which was, a very show heavy park. It was, way back in the day, MGM Studios was not built for to be a ride park. It was built half theme park, and then the other half was, a real live working film studio. So you had two. Well, you had. I don't remember when the tram tour exactly opened, but you had one ride definitely, which was the Great Movie Ride. So you had that, and then somewhere along the line they probably put in, the tram tour and such and that. But there were only two rides in the park. The rest was shows. So also in 1989 we got Indiana Jones, the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. Later we would get Beauty and the Beast live on stage. And then you had, and then of course, you also got, the Little Mermaid, Voyage of the Little Mermaid, and then Muppet Vision 3D was, in that same vein of show. So anyway, now to, kind of, go forward. So Jim Henson passes away. And all the Imagineers and especially people at the Jim Henson Company were afraid that Muppet Vision 3D wouldn't happen. And because Disney decided to just scrap the Muppets themed area. And so everyone was worried that Muppet Vision 3D would not happen. Fortunately, it did happen. It opened on May 16th, 1991. After Jim Henson's death, and it was really Jim Henson's love letter to everyone who was a Muppets fan. It was his last work, and it was really a love letter to people who loved the Muppet Show, who loved these characters, and it just felt like, this whole project just felt like it was, a love letter to Jim Henson, and Muppet Vision 3D kind of just stood for everything that Jim Henson had accomplished in his life, and it was one of those things that we felt could not be taken away. It could not be taken away. We really felt that, this was Jim Henson's, legacy. It was his last work. This is something that is very, very special. It's very, very special. And it's something that needs to remain at the park forever. Okay? Or until at least until people stop caring about the Muppets. So the show runs, for over 30 years. And then Bob Chapek became head of the Walt Disney Company. He became the CEO. Or even before that, when he was in charge of parks and resorts, there was always rumblings that they were going to get rid of Muppet Vision 3D. They were going to get rid of it because they felt that it was old, it was outdated, it needed to go. And it's, I think that us as fans, really, really despise that idea. That, Bob Chapek would do something like that to Jim Henson and his legacy. And so those rumblings have been happening for quite a number of years. But we always just put it off. We were like, no, that's never going to happen. Bob Chapek, this is just another of his stupid ideas. That's not going to happen. That's just, they can't get rid of Muppet Vision 3D. There's just no way. There is no way. And then, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and it, kind of slowed everything down, in terms of expansions or getting new experiences greenlit. And then when the parks did reopen, again, we felt like Muppet Vision 3D was not going to be touched. We felt like Muppet Vision wasn't going to be touched. It was going to be kept in the parks. It was going to be kept in the park as a lasting tribute to Jim Henson, kind of like Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, or like, something like The Haunted Mansion, or Pirates of the Caribbean, or It's a Small World, where those are deeply connected to Walt Disney. Or if you want to go over to Disneyland for, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Okay, those were all experiences connected to Walt Disney. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion happened after his death, but Country Bears, Hall of Presidents, Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, Carousel of Progress, those were specific to Walt Disney. So we always think that those experiences will never go away because they are connected to Walt Disney, and they mean something to the company. And, knock on wood that, Disney hasn't got rid of those. Thank God. Carousel of Progress was always kind of like questioned, like, we really need to keep that, but I am glad that they are updating it. So, thank God for that they're going to keep it. But we always felt the same about Muppet Vision. We always felt the same way about Muppet Vision, where it was a lasting tribute to Jim Henson and his legacy, and what he had accomplished. This was his magnum opus. This was his reward for everything that he had created. And we always felt like you cannot touch Muppet Vision 3D. You just can't, and, when Bob Chapek became head of the Walt Disney Company, there were, again, always rumblings that they were going to get rid of Muppet Vision 3D. And then, of course, again, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, which slowed everything down. And then when when everything got picked back up, and they were going to, now they were going forward with their plans to, kind of expand and change Hollywood studios again. There were talks about new experiences. And one of those was the Monsters, Inc. door coaster, which had been pitched forever, since like 2001 when the movie came out. So that's what they decided to do. And for some reason, they did two versions of the concept art. One was very clearly Monsters, Inc. was going to take over Muppet Vision 3D and the Muppets Courtyard. And they did another one where it took over Launch Bay. So Launch Bay would have gone away, and they would have put the door coaster back there, and they would have done the show where Disney Junior the new Disney Junior show is going. So that's what we thought. We all thought that, because, and then this was around the time when Bob Chapek got fired, and then Bob Iger came back, and we were all like, okay, we know that now with Bob Iger at the helm and Josh D'Amaro leading Parks and Resorts, we now know that Muppet Vision is safe. It's not going anywhere. They know that they can't get rid of it, and they're going to put the Monsters, Inc. themed land, where Launch Bay was in Animation Courtyard. And Disney had never said anything. Never said anything. And people, other guests were talking like, Muppet Vision's going away, and, that's where they're going to put the door coaster. And we were, all of us that are really kind of connected in this community, we were like, no, that's not happening. There's no way. There is no way that they're going to be stupid enough to do that. We really have faith in Bob Iger and Josh D'Amaro that they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Well, as it turns out, in the D23 announcement, which was, let's see, this is 26, Muppets closed in 25, so I think, was it 24 or 23? It might have been 24, but I could be wrong. But at D23, Josh D'Amaro announced that they were building the Monsters, Inc. themed area, but he didn't tell us where it was going. He didn't tell us where it was going. We were still kept in the dark, and people were always saying, it's going to replace Muppets. It's going to replace Muppets. That's where it's going. That's where it looks like it's going. And it was like, well, no, we were like, well, first of all, we have to wait for confirmation from Disney. But on the other hand, it was like, they're not doing that. And as it turns out, unfortunately, that's what happened. That's where they decided to go. They decided to go that route of getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D and putting Monsters, Inc., the Monsters, Inc. themed area in that location. So when that decision came out, that's what they were going to do, we were all devastated. All devastated. We were like, how can you do that? How can you get rid of Muppet Vision 3D? How can you not care about someone's last work and their legacy? I mean, that's like Josh D'Amaro saying, we are ripping out Carousel of Progress because we don't give a rat's ass about Walt Disney's career, and we don't care about, his vision. We don't care. Or we're ripping out Pirates, or we're ripping out Mansion, or we're ripping out Small World. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Okay. So, we were all devastated when the decision was made to replace Muppets with Monsters, Inc. And everyone was like, and then we were all shocked, and everyone was like, why are you shocked? They said it at D23. They did not announce that at D23. They did not. Josh D'Amaro knew. He knew that if he was to say that on stage, he would have been booed off that stage. He would have been booed off that stage. All right? So, it was not announced. It was not announced at the D23 event. I don't care what anybody says. Okay? It was not announced. All right? Okay? It was not announced. Okay? And so anyway, on June 7th, of 2024, we got to say our last goodbyes to Muppet Vision 3D. And now they are moving ahead with with this Monsters Inc. themed area. So I was really excited. I was really, really excited that they were going to build a Monsters Inc. themed area. I really was. And, the concept art that they showed us was, it was going to replace the one that they showed us it was going to replace Launch Bay. So I was like, man, we were like, man, we cannot wait for that. That is going to be awesome. Finally having the door coaster, finally bringing back life to Animation Courtyard. Going to have the restaurant, going to have, everything. That's going to be awesome. That is going to be awesome. And then somewhere along the lines, it shifted, as projects do. They shifted, and they were like, well, you know what? It would probably work better if it was on the other side of the park, and it replaced Muppet Vision 3D. So that's where they decided to build it. So the door coaster is going to be built in a previously unaccessed area to guests. That's going to be built out past the berm of Hollywood Studios. And then there's supposed to be a Monsters Inc. stage show that's going to be moving into where Muppet Vision 3D was. And they still haven't told us. They still have not told us what's replacing Muppet Vision 3D. And you know why? Because they know they screwed up. They know they screwed up. Okay? I could use another word. I could use another adjective, but I'm not. I'm just, it's very easy for me to, use a lot of curse words, but I'm not. Okay? They know they screwed up. They know that Disney screwed up on that. And so they were like, well, we have to do something. We have to do something because so many Muppets fans, I guess we underestimated our audience. So stop me if you've heard that one before. But, so then the decision was made to overlay or reskin, if you will, Rock and Roller Coaster. So Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith, which is at this point closed now at the time of recording. That closed today. So I hope you got your last ride or rides in. So that's closing or now closed. And this summer we're going to get a new Rock and Roller Coaster, which they're still keeping the same name, but it's called Starring the Muppets. And it's like, and Disney's reasoning behind this was, yeah, we got rid of Muppet Vision 3D, but now we're going to put them in Rock and Roller Coaster, so you all will shut up now, okay? And it's like, okay, well, you took away a show that everybody in the world could do, okay? There was no height requirement. There was no, there wasn't anything of that nature. Okay, so you replaced a show that everybody in the world could do with a ride that half the people can do. Okay, either they're not tall enough, or they have, they have back or neck injuries, or they have pre-existing medical conditions where they can't ride. And it's like, I don't understand. I really don't understand. I really don't get why Disney decided to say, well, we have to do something quick. So let's put the Muppets in Rock and Roller Coaster. So they're leaving the theater, but we're going to put them in Rock and Roller Coaster. Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Whatever. I don't know. And then And now I haven't even gotten to the part where I'm really mad. But we all thought then, after that, Muppets Rock and Roller Coaster would open, that once the villain's land opens at the Magic Kingdom, or maybe even before, they would take out Disney Villains Unfairly Ever After, and they would put Muppet Vision 3D in that theater. And then you would have a new Muppets Courtyard. And you wouldn't even have to name it Grand Avenue. It would be Muppets Courtyard. So, you would have Muppets Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets. And then a little bit down the road, you would have Muppet Vision 3D. And, and then you would have that whole area as a Muppets Courtyard. So we really all thought that was, again, that's what was going to happen. We were like, well, they have to put, we all demand that they put Muppet Vision 3D back into the parks. So that would make the most sense. That would make the most sense. It's right next to their new ride. It would just make a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense. And the Henson Company, when Muppet Vision 3D closed, they said that they were looking at ways to preserve parts of the experience for people to enjoy later or down the road or whatever however they worded it. So we were like, okay, that's great. That means that they've packed up Muppet Vision 3D and then they can just move it into that theater. So that would be fantastic. That would be great. And then a few days ago, we got confirmation from Brian Henson, which is Jim Henson's son, that the decision was made that Muppet Vision 3D will be put on VR, on Apple VR. Okay? Why? Why in the world would you do that? Why would you do that? Sure, that's the definition of preserving it, but that's not the same as, putting it in another theme park and preserving it that way for, thousands of guests to enjoy. Now they have to buy a damn VR set, which is, thousands of dollars to enjoy Muppet Vision 3D. And I was like, are you that stupid? Are you really that dumb to put it on VR? I just don't get it. I don't understand how they could make that decision. I just don't. I really have no idea. I really had faith in Josh D'Amaro and Brian Henson or whoever that, they would put this back into the theme park. They would put it back or any theme park for that matter. It didn't matter if they could put it in, because that's the thing about the Muppets, is they're crazy enough to take over any space. So they could have put it in Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Animal Kingdom, or they could have put the show at Disney Springs for all we cared. We were like, hell, just put it in Disney Springs. That would have been fine. That would have been great. Have something else to do at the Springs. Okay? Or you could have put it back in Hollywood Studios. Okay? But that's not the direction that they went. That's not the direction they went. They decided to go the cheap route and be like, well, we're just going to put it on VR and we don't really care. Blah, 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 blah. And now you have to buy a headset and, it's going to cost you it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. And it's, I am so mad at this decision. I am so upset at this decision. I just, when that story broke, I could not believe what I was reading. And I was at Disney Springs at that time. I could not believe that I was reading this story. I just couldn't. Had I not been in public, I would have been screaming my head off. I would have been screaming and cursing and yelling. Okay? Because that is the wrong decision. That is the wrong decision to make. All right? And you know that the Muppets are popular. You know that, okay? They just came out with a brand new Muppet Show backdoor pilot, which is probably going to get picked up, by the way, because it was the most streamed thing on Disney Plus. So that should tell you right there that the Muppets are still very, very popular. They're still very popular, okay? And for people, and for the naysayers to say, well, Muppet Vision 3D was boring and I didn't like it, and blah, 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 blah. And it was, excuse me, and it was old and everything and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, obviously you weren't a Muppets fan. Okay? Obviously you were not a Muppets fan. Okay? And then people try to get themselves off the hook where they're like, no, I love Muppets and I love the Muppet Show, but I didn't like Muppet Vision 3D. I'm like, well, how can you like one and not the other? Because they're the same thing. They're the same exact thing. All right? Now, Muppet Vision 3D was obviously a lot shorter than the Muppet Show. The Muppet Show is a half-hour TV was a half-hour TV show. Muppet Vision 3D was obviously a 15-minute, in theater show, but it was basically just an extension of the Muppet Show. Okay, so for people to say that they like one and not the other, that makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. Okay. And I know people want to go on and on and on about this, Tom Sawyer Island thing and them getting getting rid of the rivers of America and they're ruining the aesthetic of Magic Kingdom. I'm sorry, but if any park is being ruined by aesthetic, it's Hollywood Studios, which already has an identity crisis. Okay? Epcot has an identity crisis. So does Hollywood Studios. Hollywood Studios has had a identity crisis for a long time. A long time. Ever since that they got rid of the tram tour and then the Great Movie Ride. It's, the park makes no sense. It makes no sense. Okay? What started out as a peek behind the curtain and how they made your favorite TV shows or your favorite movies is now turning into, well, now you're going to step into the movies. It's like, now some cases that's fine. Like, Galaxy's Edge. I like walking through Galaxy's Edge. I'm not a Star Wars fan, so I don't really, Star Wars is not my cup of tea, but I love walking around that land because it feels like I am in Star Wars. Okay? The entertainment, now we could use more of that, but, that's a different story. That's a totally different thing than, right next door, which is Toy Story Land, which I walk through Toy Story Land, and at no point do I feel like I'm in Andy's backyard. At no point do I, because it's so... The quality, it's bad. The quality is bad. I'm sorry. For the people that love Toy Story Land, good for you. I don't like it. The rides are junky. They're, at no point do I feel like I'm in Andy's backyard. It just feels like, the area's not dripping with money. And, Slinky Dog Dash is not even a good coaster. It's not. Now, I like the coaster. The coaster's fine. What I hate about Slinky Dog Dash is there are so many sightline issues. So many. Okay? At one point you're looking at Galaxy's Edge. At another point you're looking at the Tower of Terror. And I was talking about this with a lady at the Rock and Roller Coaster event. We were talking about, all this, we were just, shooting the shift, if you will. And we were talking about Toy Story Land, and I'm like, at no point do I feel like I'm in Andy's backyard. At no point. Because first of all, you walk through the land and you immediately, you immediately know that you're in a theme park. Okay? Because the budget was not there. The budget was not there. And I know people are going to come in the comments and they're going to be like, it's supposed to be a toy land. And it's like, that doesn't mean it couldn't cost more money. Okay? You could have put more money into this project and it could have, it could have looked a whole lot better. And Slinky Dog could have been a really great coaster at that point. But it wasn't. It just wasn't allowed to be. Okay, it wasn't allowed to be. It was budget cut because this was Bob Chapek's, one of his projects. So that's why, the budgets were cut. That's why the land looks junky. That's why, there's so many sightline issues and everything. But, but I have no doubt. I have no doubt that, a lot of money is going to be put into this Monsters, Inc. themed area. But I'm sorry. You could have had, you could have expanded out into the backstage area. You could, I guess you could have, I assume you could expand back there. You could have put, maybe a restaurant back there or something, but to get rid of Muppet Vision 3D, I don't really see why I don't see why they had to do that. It's like I just would have preferred the door coaster at this point. Now I'm like, since you got rid of Muppet Vision 3D, I'm not even looking forward to the land. I'm not even really looking forward to the land. Okay, now I'm looking forward to the door coaster because that is not what's replacing Muppet Vision 3D. Okay, many people, say that I have a problem with this whole project and everything. It's like, look, if Disney was just doing the ride, if they were just putting in the door coaster and they left Muppets alone, it would have been fine. Okay, it would have been fine. All right. But they chose not to do that. They chose not to do that. They chose to put in a whole themed area. And I still think that it could have gone where where Launch Bay was. I still think that they could have done that. They could have made all those all those cast members move. They could have knocked down the parking garage. They could have built so much back there. And they just didn't do that. They didn't do that, and they decided, well, we'll just, well, no one cares about Muppet Vision anymore. It's fine. We'll just do that. But the fact is that they went ahead with that and they didn't tell us. I think that's a shame. That is a shame. Disney, if you really cared about your project, then you should have come out and said it. You should have come out and said, you know what? We have made the decision to close Muppet Vision 3D, close Grand Avenue, and replace that with the Monsters, Inc. themed land. Okay? And if you would have, it would have been much, I think we still would have been upset. But the fact that Disney said absolutely nothing about it, and they were just like, nope, we're closing Muppets. That's it. It's done. And it's, well, you didn't give us, now obviously we had, a year to say goodbye, which I think was the right choice. But, I think that you could have given us more time. You could have given us more time to say goodbye. All right. Instead of just a year. Okay. Because if Disney truly knew that they were replacing Muppet Vision 3D and the Grand Avenue section for a long time, then they should have just come out and said it. They should have come out and said it when that decision was made. Okay? If you were worried about your fan base, you know, I'm sorry, put your big boy pants on and say, you know what? The decision has been made that we are going to get rid of Muppet Vision 3D, and we're going to put in a Monsters Inc. themed area. Now, we would have all been very upset, but they would have admitted it. They would have admitted to that, but they didn't. They didn't admit anything. I don't care what anybody tells me that, oh, they announced it at D23 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. They didn't announce anything. They didn't announce zippity-doo-dah, all right? At no point did they say during D23 that Monsters, Inc. was going to replace Muppets. They never said that. Not one time when this project was greenlit. Not once. Okay? So, so for them to not even say anything and to just do it anyway, I think that was really, really shady of them. It was really shady, and it was really dumb. It was really, really dumb. And then on the, again, when they said that they were preserving this experience, then that could have meant you could have put it back in the theme parks. You could have put it back, and you didn't. And you went the cheaper route, and now you're going to charge everybody 2 arms and 2 legs for this experience. And I'm sorry, that's wrong. That is absolutely asinine, pardon my French. But it's dumb. That is dumb. All right? And, I will always stand by my decision that Muppet Vision 3D could have stayed in the theme parks. It could have stayed in the theme parks, but they didn't do that. They chose the other route. They chose the cheaper route, which I think was really, really dumb. Really, really stupid. So I lost a little faith with Josh D'Amaro, and I don't know if I can really blame Josh D'Amaro for this. I don't know. Maybe, because he was at Parks and Resorts during this time. I know we all want to blame Bob Iger and everything, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he really came into a board meeting and was like, you know what we should do? We should get rid of Muppet Vision 3D, and we should put in a Monsters Inc. themed area. I just don't. I really don't see. Now, Bob Chapek, absolutely. I absolutely could see that happening. Okay? I just don't think that Bob Iger would have been that dumb. I don't think he would have been that stupid. Okay? Now, he's not getting any merits because, that's what they ultimately decided to do, but I can't wrap my head around that Bob Iger would have been the one to replace Muppet Vision 3D. I just don't. I really don't. That was, unless I know otherwise for sure, it was always a Bob Chapek thing. It was always a Bob Chapek decision. He always wanted to get rid of Muppet Vision 3D. He always wanted to get rid of it. And this was his last laugh. That, Disney may have fired me, but I took away your Muppet Vision 3D. Okay? So, to wrap this all up, I think that was a really dumb decision for A, for Disney to get rid of it, and B, to go the cheap route and say, we're just going to put it on VR. And if you're going to put it on VR, then why don't you just put the whole damn park experience on VR. And then no one goes to the theme parks anymore. Okay? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So I was really, really, really disgusted that, that both Disney and Brian Henson, that's the decision that they went. Okay? Because it basically shows that Brian Henson really didn't care. He didn't care. Okay? It's like, yeah, that was my dad's last work, but I don't care. It's fine. We'll put it on VR. It's okay. We'll just shut everybody up. So I really don't agree with that. I really don't. So I it was a dumb decision on both sides of the aisle, and I think that Disney is really they know. They absolutely know that they screwed up. They absolutely know, because as soon as Muppet Vision 3D went away, they were like, we're going to give you a new Skyliner wrap. We're going to give you a new ride. We're going to put them in Jollywood Nights. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to, blah, blah, do all this merchandise. So they know they absolutely screwed up. They absolutely know that. Okay? Don't let them fool you. They absolutely know that they effed up. Okay? But, they, obviously, they don't want to admit that, but they trust me, they know. They know, because they've heard it from us. They've heard it from other Disney fans. They know. They absolutely know. There is no way that they don't know that. Absolutely no. There is absolutely no way that, that they were going to be shocked when we were all up in arms about them getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D. So, but that's my rant. I've done 3 rants on this thing already. We're just going to have to wait and see once Monsters, the Monsters Inc. themed area opens. But I really think that was a dumb decision for the Henson Company to just go the cheap route and put Muppet Vision 3D on VR, instead of doing the right thing and putting it back into the theme parks where it belongs. So, but I don't know. But let me know how you feel. But I've had a lot of, especially, these experts online that, that tell me that I'm wrong, I'm an idiot, that Muppet Vision 3D deserved to go, and then they want to whine about the Rivers of America, and it's like, I'm sorry, that is not. You cannot put Muppets in the same conversation as Rivers of America. There's no way. They are on 2 different levels. Okay, they're on 2 different levels. Everybody in the world knows who the Muppets are. Not everybody in the world knows about Tom Sawyer, okay, or Huckleberry Finn. I'm sorry. If you want to argue with me, you are more than welcome to, but I'm sorry. You expect me to believe that more people love Tom Sawyer Island, and the Rivers of America than they do about Muppet Vision 3D? I'm sorry, you expect me to believe that? That ain't happening. That is not happening. So, whatever. But that's going to be the end of this rant. It's, already long enough as it is. I could go on and on and on. I could go on for like 2 hours about this, because, this thing just makes me really, really upset. Another part of Hollywood Studios is dead now. They keep getting rid of the things that have been there forever. And, it's the park is just, it's so jaded, and it's so, there's really no theme anymore. There is no theme anymore to Hollywood studios. There just isn't. And thank God. Thank God that the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular is still there. Because, if that ever goes, then that will be it. That will be it. There will be no more vestige of Hollywood studios. Or if you want to put Beauty and the Beast in that conversation, you can, but, the whole idea about seeing how they made your favorite movies, with the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, if that goes, then that park will have no meaning. It will have zero meaning. And trust me, right now, that's the only thing that's hanging on. That's the only thing that's hanging on. So I really hope to God that never closes, or at least not in my lifetime. So, but that's, again, so anyway, to just kind of wrap this up, I think that this was the wrong decision to make. They went down the cheaper route and decided to, do a really crummy thing, And I'm sorry. I will never forgive Disney for that. I will never forgive Disney for getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D. All right. And it's, the people that want to make this about Tom Sawyer Island and the riverboat, they didn't kill the aesthetic of the Magic Kingdom. They didn't kill the aesthetic of the Magic Kingdom. You cannot kill the aesthetic of the Magic Kingdom. Okay. The more that they chip away of Hollywood studios, or Animal Kingdom, or even Epcot for that matter, the more that they chip away of what those parks was supposed to be, there's going to be nothing left, and it's going to be just, these parks about, just regular IPs, and it's going to be, it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. So and look, I'm excited about Muppets, the Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets. I'm excited about that. But is it going to be better than Aerosmith? I don't know. I just don't know if it is. I just don't, because the whole aesthetic of Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith was, it's like going to a party. You're going to a concert. You're going to a party. You're going to have a great time. And I just don't see that with Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets. It's going to be, now it's going to be, havoc and mayhem and, but having a good time, I just don't know. I just don't. So, and when the attraction opens this summer, and if it turns out to be better or just as good as Aerosmith, then I will sit here and I will eat my shoe. I will eat my shoe, okay? And be like, you know what? I was wrong. I will eat my words. I will absolutely eat my words. All right. But until that happens, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. All right. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to my channel for more insane rants. I thank you guys very much for watching this video. Y'all keep each other safe and healthy. I'll see you right back here tomorrow for the news. I know I said I was going to go on my rant on, when did I go to Disney Springs? On Friday? Let's see, today's Sunday. Yesterday was the event. No, Friday I said goodbye. So Thursday. Thursday I went to Disney Springs. So I know that I said that I was going to do my rant on Thursday, but I was so mad that I was just like, I needed to take a step back. I needed to take a breath and just kind of relax, calm down, and, just kind of get my thoughts together on all this. So that's why it took a couple more days for me to do this. So I apologize for that. But again, if you'd like this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to this channel for more content. I thank you guys very much for watching this video. You all keep each other safe and healthy. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Monday for the news. And we will see you real soon.